Hi, everybody. My name is Alex, and you've probably seen some of my videos on my religious side of life. And it's been a while since I put out one on martial arts, so I wanted to talk to you today about um, my life in martial arts and what it's done and given me. And for those of you who know me well, that you know that I have kind of a fascination. I started in traditional schooling. I got my belt in Kukkiwan style Taekwondo under the instruction of Grandmaster Jong Kang in Mesa, Arizona, who was the senior instructor and the founder of Brothers Taekwondo. The Grandmaster is now retired. And over the years, I put out a video or two about my interest in a new developing phenomenon called, the learning martial arts online. Because when I was growing up, this was something that was frowned upon, to say the least. So I had a simple question: why does it exist aside for the obvious reason of money? And can it work? Not does it work? Because if you put in enough work at anything, sooner or later, you can develop a reasonable degree of skill. So, my first foray was in the world of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And I started this interest because when I finally got my belt, I was working construction 5 days a week, sometimes six, and I was training in Brothers Taekwondo pretty much about the same. And a question came up as I got my belt because I developed two kinds of arthritis. And when it came bad. I couldn't walk. I was on crutches a lot of the time. And it never really got better. And you can't kick bags. You can't practice Taekwondo. What do you do? So I started looking into these things because I needed an alternative. Add to that I moved to another state where martial arts are vastly underrepresented. So I started looking into these options. And not only that, can they work? Because we've all seen the BS martial artists who promise that you can use magical powers to defeat your opponents and other nonsense like that. And my background, like I said, was in a traditional school. For those of you who have the camera, I'm kind of a big boy, and that's because even today I can't do as much physical activity as I used to be able to do when I received my belt, when I was physically active and working and doing all these things. So, like I said, I started with Gracie University. And I did that for two reasons. One, they had a program for children that taught them how to deal with bullying. So I have a young son. And I thought, perfect, something that my son and I can do together. And the second reason was that it was attached to reputable names in the martial arts world, which was another concern. Because there's a lot of guys that are like, yeah, pay me $20 and I'll give you a certificate, but without any real knowledge. So I've investigated and I've tried a few of these programs, and I want to tell you a little bit about what my experiences were with those programs. Now, the programs that I've tried Karate Academy Online, I tried Donks Bujinkan Program, and I tried Gracie University. My primary style will continue to be, and always has been, Taekwondo, where I continue to practice the exact same things that were given to me, although I have to practice more like Tai Chi these days because I can't be kicking bags and doing jumping kicks. I can get hurt so easy. But you don't stop doing what you love to do just because it becomes harder. You work around it. So I needed other options to train, and I needed other options to keep my feet to the coals. So I'd keep training, keep working, and if I don't train, I get a lot heftier than I am right now. So let's talk about the different programs that I tried. Now, the first one that I mentioned was Karate Academy Online, and that was taught by a sensei by the name of John Hodge. That is a modified style of Uichiro karate. and I participated in roughly about half the program. And the reason why I didn't continue with the program was a combination of financial reasons and time. Now, the lessons that he put forward and some of the stretching ideas that he put forward, traditional karate, especially the older forms, sometimes include techniques that are very difficult for you to apply in a real fight. The punches and the kicks, those are pretty universal. The elbow strikes, the knees, those are pretty universal. Some of the blocks are very hard to perform. And for me, what I needed to train with someone who would provide resistance. So in this town, there's a group of bare knuckle boxers, and they actually organize into professional fights and bouts. And there are people who challenge the legality of all that. And that's not really the point of this video. So I would take the techniques that I took from each of these programs, along with my own background in Taekwondo, and I would spar with these folks. I wanted to see, first off, would they work? Are they feasible? Can you handle an opponent who's really an MMA fighter? And the answer is yes and no. Now, the yes part is that it depends on how you're being trained and who's helping you train. If you do martial arts by yourself, what you're going to accomplish is you're going to become a hobbyist. And there's nothing wrong with that, but your goals change. If you want to do home study martial arts, and your goal is, say, competition, that's one thing. You're going to be practicing the techniques and the forms. You can do that. But if you want to get into, say, self-defense, you need someone to help test you. You can't just study the videos and think, now I understand the secrets of self-defense. That's not how that works. In Taekwondo, there's two kinds of fighting, and all the students begin with the first kind of fighting, which is the static. You are here, and your opponent is facing you, and you throw a punch, and they block and punch, or they block and kick, or they step back and kick forward, or whatever it is, back and forth, static defense and attack scenarios. And then as you begin to learn, what you're beginning to learn is how to take those techniques and transform into an organic style of fighting. Now, Taekwondo has many of the same techniques as most of the other martial arts. So does karate, and so does kung fu, and so does boxing. A punch is a punch is a punch. A kick is the same thing. And there are guys that, of course, like kickboxers, for example. I really have a fascination with kickboxing too, but there's not really an avenue for me to explore kickboxing where I'm living. So the style of Yuichiro introduced me to variations on punches. That was the most useful part of that program, because in Taekwondo you have the straight knuckle punch. But in other martial arts styles, you can push out certain knuckles for striking soft targets, and that sucks if you get punched like that. And it does work. You can break bones that way. And I've seen fighters use that and get in trouble for doing that. So in terms of the forms of the styles that they taught at Karate Academy Online, the best and most useful element that I took was reactions, because in the forms, they have you, turning to face an opponent, executing the block and the retaliation. That's not something that's taught. In most schools, you square up, opponent to opponent, hands up, the sensei says, go ahead, and you go at it. Now, the main stance, that was a little bit difficult, because they have the main stance, your hands come up, and it goes into waoke blocks and different techniques. What I would recommend, if you're going to use a program like this, I would recommend that you practice the techniques, and then you use those techniques against someone who's helping you train, who knows how to fight. Um, and with that, I would also add that if you have the ability to go to a school to train, that is always preferable than the online stuff. The online stuff is chiefly effective if A, you don't have access to a school, or if B, you're working so much that you cannot commit to a regular training schedule. Now, in Taekwondo, we have a tenet called indomitable spirit. And the way that applies here is like, take my example. I have an injury that keeps me from training the way I used to train, the way I really want to train. So I have to adapt the way I train so that I can continue to practice. My knowledge is that I'm no longer combat worthy, but I still keep training because I love the martial art, and B, because for me, I have over a decade in training since I got my belt. I'm not going to stop. And there are techniques that I can use: knees, elbows, punches, things like that, knife hand strikes that are still applicable. But if I'm in a fight, I'm not going to be throwing, snap kicks and, turning kicks and things like that. The only kick that I might still throw is a back kick or a side kick, something where I'm not connecting with a part of my foot that is damaged or injured. Those are still theoretically possible, but there's still a really high chance for injury. Even kicking the bag can hurt me. So I found a way to adapt my training and keep moving forward. So Karate Academy had some to speak for it. He had stretching exercises, conditioning exercises. I really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed the ability to keep training and keep adding different styles. However, I would also point out that I was trained in a traditional school, so I already understood certain elements of school etiquette. I understood certain elements of what testing looks like. I understood the training methods that were common, and I was able to bring that knowledge with me. If you're learning a martial art right out of the gate, you've never been in a school before, it's probably a good idea that you go to a school and you start learning from an experienced teacher. Later, once you have experience in a martial art, if you want to add something else to you, go for it. Go for it. There's nothing that says you can't do that. Now, the second program that I mentioned was the Bujinkan Program off of Van Donk. Now, this comes in a binder and it's got a lot of information on Japanese terminology. It has step-by-step techniques. And in the beginning, I was asking how any of these techniques could be really applicable. So what I did was I started looking up senior instructors and students sparring. And I saw how they took the mechanics of that style and they put it together in something organic and then put it into effect. As a matter of fact, of all the schools, I would say as far as variety of techniques go, Gracie University is my all-time favorite, but the second favorite would be the Bujinkan program under Van Donk, because they offer different kinds of techniques and they offer you the ability to fight in an outside of a linear format. Like I said earlier, instead of the whole line up with your opponent, they punch, you block and punch. They're teaching you right off the bat to aim for different angles. And the third one is actually world renowned in some ways. It's the Gracie University program. Now, the Gracie University program I like because you can get your stripes online, but to get your actual belt, you have to go to a certified training center, which means that you will have someone test you physically to see if you can keep up, if you've been paying attention to your lessons. Because with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and quick caveat, there was a school that opened up near me about 30 minutes away in Landers, so I started going to that one. And my knowledge grew. But if you don't have anything, no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you want to learn, Gracie University is an amazing program. I loved it. I trained with it. I still use it when I'm not in class. as kind of a reference manual so that I can look over the techniques and the instructions. And then when I meet up with my partner, it's fresh in my mind and I can go through that. So the techniques, I started with the combatives. Just focused on the combatives. I left the other stuff in the master cycle alone. And I've taken a look at some of the ideas and principles of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, throughout all of this, as I said, my main style is and always will be Taekwondo because that's where I got my belt. That's where I did my training. I put in years of work on it. I love it to death, but I'm not the same as I used to be. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is like a close second passion because aside from the fact that I can compete with that, with my arthritis and other issues still intact, I can still roll. I can spar. I can go pound for pound in a way that's no longer possible with Taekwondo. And I am so grateful for the ability to meet up with other people who share the same passion that I do and train with those people and get, more and more and more experience and grow. And I can train in such a way where I'm not having to move exaggeratedly slow so that I don't hurt myself or in some manner like that. Now, Gracie University, you can buy the techniques individually, and I like that because if you're very poor, there's literally no excuse. You can spare a little bit of money every now and then, learn a new technique, practice till you get a little more money, buy another technique, rinse and repeat. And they give you a schedule to adhere to so that you can practice, and keep going. So those are the 3 programs that I looked at because I was curious, how do they work? Do they work? And can they be something that is beneficial? And the answer is, like I said, is both yes and no. If your goal is to compete in katas or light sparring, yeah, it'll work. You'll be able to advance in rank. But if you want self-defense, you need someone to test you. You need someone to push you after you've been working on techniques. And if you don't have that, then your martial arts are going to be lacking. Now, we all train in martial arts. The initial attraction is so that we can protect ourselves. Now, that's it for today. I'll be adding more videos. Take care.